So this is Ramon Gonzalez from the CPR Lyon. I'm going to present a paper called Digital Intersubjectivity at Scholar Multimedia Libraries, New Ways of Sharing Meanings. So we are going to talk about the theory contents which support of approach of study or research. We will explain the aims. We will carry out our research, talking about method and findings. So in 2011, so last year, Marin and Gonzalez-Piñal introduced digital intersubjectivity construct with the main proposal of explaining the new ways of sharing meanings when dealing with digital mediators. So we are considering Vygotsky and psychological sociocultural theory contents. They considered some notions from the Dialogic Theory of Bakhtin, situated learning from authors of the psychological sociocultural theory of Vygotsky, but also network society notion of Castells and some points of the theory of communicative action of Habermas. And so within this theoretical context, it's important to highlight three important points. The first one is that sociocultural scenarios include cultural instruments and tools which allow to solve issues in a valid way, of course, within that environment, this is a contribution of Barbara Rogoff in 1990. The second point is that sociocultural scenario includes people who deal with those cultural instruments. It becomes a symbolic exchange area in which material and non-material instruments become semiotic mediators. At the same time, it's important to underline that material mediators, like objects and technologies, and non-material instruments, we are going to talk about discursive genres, typical ways of thinking. Okay, so we have two different kind of mediators, and one of the most important findings of this research is that we think we have found a third kind of mediator. Okay, we will talk about that afterwards, of course. So the third point of the contents of the theory contents which support our research is that language, and above all speech, are the most powerful vehicles which allow the dialogic interaction between people and mediators. So we believe that the emergence of the new information and communication technologies have revolutionized the ways in which people deal with mediators. So that means how people construct the reality in which they live, that is how sociocultural scenarios are built up. Of course, how people learn from the scenario, because we cannot forget that we consider the situated learning notion. Okay, so when we talk about sociocultural scenarios and mediators, we are really talking about how people learn. And finally, of course, the way in which people share meanings. So it's just because it's absolutely necessary to develop a new notion of intersubjectivity, because we are dealing with new kind of mediators. So digital intersubjectivity notion must be considered from the diachronic approach, because the actual environments also include traditional mediators. Secondly, because digital mediators are able to give infinite answers with regard to their functionalities and features. So the first point is that we don't just deal with digital mediators. When we go to a multimedia library, for example, we find traditional mediators, but we find at the same time digital mediators. So the point of view must be considered from a diachronic approach. The difference between a digital mediator and a traditional mediator, we can call that an analogical mediator, is that the digital mediator is able to give us an infinite number of answers. That means when we expect something from a washing machine, is something really clear, really explicit. We cannot compare in a functional level, okay, the features which can be proposed by a computer with regard to a washing machine. So we think that's a really important issue, because under the digital mediators we are talking about language, okay, language. So that's really interesting. The third point is that digital mediators used to reverse the teacher learning rules when dealing close to the ZPD concept in Vygotsky. So now it's more likely that children lead adults when looking for a solution mediated by ICT. The Vygotskyan notion, it was exactly the opposite situation. It was the adult who usually leads the child in order to find a solution for the issue. So that's a really interesting point. And finally, digital mediators are more independent of the context than the traditional ones. So that's a really important point as well, of course. So, now we are going to talk about the aims of our research. So the first one is to recognize digital flows with regard to communication in social interaction within libraries. The second one is to describe people positioning when interaction at the school mediated by digital technologies or traditional ones. And finally, we would like to carry out a theoretical approach towards a digital intersubjectivity conception within learning processes. So the method we have used is, of course, we have asked ourselves a question: why have we decided to explore scholar multimedia libraries? Of course, because we are studying how people learn, and scholar multimedia libraries are based in a well-defined institutional environment. That's really important. And secondly, a scholar multimedia library represents a crossroads between traditional and digital mediators. So it's a really special point that we have applied a survey technique. Okay, on one hand is a narrative. It's not narrative because we want people to describe their positioning, okay, when sharing meanings inside the libraries, or main proposal is just because we have created a narrative survey. This on the other hand, we have a pictorial survey, which is going to be able to explain how the sociocultural scenario is built up through interactional processes. So that's an important point, because we are going to try to explain how we build up this scenario in order to learn inside it. Okay. So population of the studies people who are from 14 to 18 and who study at high school in France. Scholar multimedia libraries in France are especially interesting for our proposal because they are considered a priority in the development of the French curriculum. So this is a extract of our survey. Okay, we have a mapping which people um, can position it themselves, and we have digital mediators, but we have as well analogical mediators. It has been really interesting using this kind of instrument or assessment instrument. So the main results, we have three different groups of results. The first one is that multimedia library as an institutionalized environment. Multimedia library is perceived by students as embedded in the scholar culture, so that means as a conservative place which keeps the actions favored by school. For example, the symmetry between students and teachers. As a consequence of the first point, multimedia library favors a scientific concept that is systematic learning. And thirdly, students' constructions of the reality inside libraries show that multimedia libraries keep favoring unidirectional, hierarchical, and static interactions. We are talking about perceptions as students, of course. A second interesting point is consider the multimedia library as a place for carrying out digital or analogical activities. So firstly, the analysis of the pictorial items shows that the students placed very easily digital technologies within the library. Secondly, drawings show that digital technologies such printers or scanner are clearly favored in comparison with analogical mediators such desks or books. That means that digital logical is mainly favored. Finally, and the most interesting results, as expected, our findings show evidences of interactions beyond the physical space of the library that encourage us to focus our further researches on the constructions of a new kind of reality under virtual conditions. So it's going to be interested in further research, develop a third kind of mediators within the new virtualization concept. That's really interesting. Secondly, we consider that researches about situated learning should be focused in between interaction with both material and non-material digital mediators, and considering as well, of course, that third kind of mediators within the virtualized world. So here you have some references which combines dialogical theory and our own theory. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention, and have a great day. So this is Ramon Gonzalez from the CPR Lyon. I'm going to present a paper called Digital Intersubjectivity at Scholar Multimedia Libraries, New Ways of Sharing Meanings. So we are going to talk about the theory contexts which support of approach of study or research. We will explain the aims, and we will carry out our research talking about method and findings. So